I'd like to open up the Emergency Management Ordinance Workshop. Where are we going to start here?
Phil has a plan.
Phil has a plan, so we're going to start with Phil.
Yes, because
Okay.
I have 1 hour minus 7 minutes. So
You have what?
1 hour minus 7 minutes.
Okay.
So I have an agenda in front of you, and real quick here. The only one I don't see is Brandon, but I've never met him. I did talk to him on the phone. I finally met Vicki, the health officer.
Does everybody know Vicki? Vicki Erickson, our health officer?
We have spoken a zillion times on the phone during COVID.
Yeah,
I don't think we've ever
We
met.
all did.
Oh, I think we've met, but
I'm sure we
through
have.
the years,
Yeah.
Does everyone else know each other?
I'm sorry. Let's just do a quick introduction.
Good idea.
Go ahead, Mr. Ross.
Want to start with me? Hi,
Yeah.
John Ross, Superintendent, Acton School Department.
Phil Caruso, EMA Director.
Will Langley, Road Commissioner.
Wade Ham, Fire Chief. Dan Krampitz, Director of Technology.
Ed Walsh, Selectman. John Danikamp, Selectman.
Daniel Norwood, Select Person.
Dave Winchell, Selectman.
Tom McGrady, Selectman.
Jason Cini, Code Officer.
Jennifer Rue, Town Administrator.
Vicki Erickson, local health officer.
Ray Lopez, EMA volunteer.
Nice.
So, first of all, I wanted to, real quick, I thank John and Andy for what they did for us getting the Red Cross shelter designation changed and all the help they gave me. Recently, the fire department, Wayne and his folks helped me get my stuff in the space. The cots showed up, so we have 24 cots and 50 blankets over there. So thank you, Wayne.
Phil, real quick, you might want to use your voice a little bit so we can hear you.
Okay, and then I appreciate the select board and Jennifer letting me do it this way, because I kind of insisted on this way back when, because I thought it was the best way to expedite things, and what this is all about is cooperation. And everybody in here has separate duties that you do every day, but the whole point of this in an emergency situation is those duties may or may not be exactly the same thing, and we might have to interleave different departments depending on what it is we're trying to deal with. So I appreciate that. This is the first of 2 workshops, probably the simpler one, because, and you saw this in the ordinance, probably the reference to the EOP or Emergency Operations Plan. Both my being the director or whoever the board designates and having a plan are statutes in the state of Maine. Okay, so this isn't just arbitrary, but we decided to, as a town, to make this a priority and make it more available to everybody, education-wise, the website, exercises we'll be doing. And the first thing was to have an ordinance to establish framework for authority, responsibilities of all of us, and the EOP, or the plan itself, then takes that a step further and tasks people or designates each department. And keep in mind, this only takes effect in a declared emergency. And the ordinance is to allow us to do that locally, which right now technically you can't. The county can, the state has, and of course FEMA can. But this allows us, especially under home rule, to take our own community emergency situations into our own hands, which I think is a good idea, and obviously the select board did as well. So the second workshop will be that the EOP that I'm working on will go out ahead of time just like this. I put a whole bunch of things in there that are canned things. I don't know everybody's job descriptions or duties, so you'll have plenty of time and a lot more need for input into that. For the school, of course, they've got a very established plan. It's fire department, obviously, so some of them will be easy. Even the animal control officer is in there, and the health officer, and Dan and IT and everybody else. And so in there, you're actually going to be inputting what you see based on your job description and what tasks and roles you would be doing in an emergency situation if it occurred. Then we get together again like this, which will take obviously more time than an hour, I think. And obviously Jason's part of this, because I guess to make this simple, I looked for a definition of emergency management, nothing came up, so I kind of made something here just to make it obvious why we're all here, because some of us might go, okay, well, I understand there's an ordinance, but why do I have to be there? So I just wrote it, the efficient use of government resources to effectively perform all phases of emergency management. And you can see on the agenda, those are the 4 phases. And we'll, in the fire department, work on these, some of these all the time, like recovery and responding to them. This is part of the planning process and mitigation in a way, right? We're looking at problems ahead of time by becoming a cooperative unit. And first thing we need to do is go through the ordinance. So what the real purpose of this meeting is to get everybody on the same page. I wanted us to all be involved so that someone doesn't feel like they're being dictated to or left out. And it's important that we all have a say in this, because depending on the emergency, we could all be involved in it. And yet we're in a little town of Acton, but we're surrounded by woods, we have old dams, we have floods, we have 109 with hazardous materials. We're not immune, as Wayne knows, to anything going wrong. And here we are, you know, it's our responsibility to make sure we're prepared, and this is the best way to do it, in my opinion. So hopefully you agree with that. So that explains why we're here. Again, I already stated the purpose of the ordinance, and in the ordinance, one of the first things, of course, stated is the purpose. And what we'll do is go through each section. Everybody's had time to look at it. Most of it is pretty cut and dry. It's a legal document, obviously. Council's already reviewed it for the town because they have to.
Phil, can I ask a quick question? Just because I know we've come into the other scenarios. Does then another party have to review this? I know when I have shoreline zoning, the state, the DEP has to review it. We had another scenario where something was on the water and the DEP was supposed to be involved and didn't get involved. So is there any other parties that need to review this before even trying to push this forward? You know what I'm saying? Because I get the whole town legal, I've done the ordinance and stuff myself, but I just don't want to get in the same kind of mix that we got in because another entity wanted to be involved.
So, let me, if I can chime in. So we actually, I had the conversation with
Okay.
legal, and we did double check that there were no other
Awesome.
outside agencies. So he wanted to make sure, thought maybe county could look at it, but there were no other jurisdictions like the situation you mentioned. But it's a good point.
And actually, so no, there isn't technically another organization we have to go through, except our town meeting, right? So, and that gets to the goal of this meeting, primarily is to get through it today so that it can be rewritten with, and what you can't see, since you don't have the red ink in your copies, but you can see it's kind of highlighted in gray. I put in a whole bunch of global, in effect, questions that needed to be answered, initially by the selectmen amongst themselves, and then that's why we're here today. To get those questions nailed down so I can rewrite this as what I call a final draft, meaning what we're gonna submit to the town meeting on April 12th.
There's a public hearing first.
What's
We're
that?
gonna submit it to the public hearing first.
Yeah, I don't know all the formalities, but.
Well, yeah, I just wanna make it clear, since it's being forwarded, that the public would have the opportunity to make any proposed changes, or at least offer those to the board, so.
Right, okay, good. So that, our goal today is to get our final draft for that to be presented to the public. And I think we can do that today, no problem. Let's see. And hopefully everybody shows up to vote that's an Acton resident, so we can get this thing approved, because obviously it's the framework for everything else that's gonna happen. And I guess we can go through each part. But I decided to use the article format.
So, Phil, do we want to, I mean, has everybody read this document?
Yeah.
Everybody's read it?
Yeah.
No, as I understand it, I had just one suggested change from the attorney, but you have some changes, you have changes after your meeting with the fire chief?
Well,
You have-
yeah, basically, for the most part, it wound up, and again, this applies to what showed up in red ink, in other words, the global questions, who has the authority to do what. The obvious ones were declaring and terminating the emergency itself, which to me absolutely needs to be an elected official. So that one was kind of a no-brainer, right?
So well, let's go in order so we don't skip any of them. So I guess what I was asking is, do we feel like we need to go down through each one? Or if everybody has reviewed it, we want to touch on the areas that I know the fire chief had some changes, the board is going to hear a recommendation from me on a minor change, or do you want to go down through it and just let people give their input?
Well,
Through it?
let's put it this way, Articles 1 through 4 are pretty straightforward.
Okay.
And if someone has a comment or input or change to that, any of those 4 sections?
Any particular reason why 4.9 is highlighted?
Yeah, we're going to go over that one, right?
Okay.
Yes.
All right, because that's part of section 4 that you mentioned.
Yes, and actually later in the document in Article, there's Article 11 under Operations Plan refers back to it, because that was a decision that needed to be made. Did we want to set it up as a committee or just label each person or each title separately? So I kind of refer back to it.
So as we look at that, the committee is listed to be the select board, we have the town administrator, the emergency management director, the fire chief, department heads, and I would spell out director of IT, I think it's a little clearer. Animal control officer, code enforcement officer, health officer.
And one thing I do,
Yeah.
it should be local health
Local.
officer, because that's what we are, the LHOs.
Perfect.
Local?
Local health officer.
And I don't think we need department heads in there because
Yeah,
we're
because-
labeling them all.
Yep, all right, so we'll scratch that, we'll call it director of IT, local health officer. I might put, health officer, comma, school superintendent, and any other party as deemed necessary by the board of selectmen or the select board. Just to leave yourself that opening in case something happens and you need the school nurse as a resource to sit on the committee.
And
Just
so
an info.
that's good, because these are basically the definitions, obviously, like any other ordinance, so when you look at it later, you know what that means. And Wayne suggested, and I agreed, instead of just putting a committee, we're gonna spell it out like we just did. So that answers that question, which also comes back in later in Article 11, so.
Does anybody have any concerns with those changes or anything they wanna add?
No.
All right. So organization, Phil, is that section good?
Article 5, this is pretty standard, and of course, you can see it's referenced in 5.1 to the laws or the statutes that dictate this anyway, so. Article 6,
Excuse me, maybe I've missed it. Is agency a defined term someplace?
the,
5.1 and 5.2, it references agency. Is that a defined term?
Good.
I'm not sure what it means.
Good catch, yeah, I definitely.
Yeah, let's see.
4.10 maybe, add a definition of agency.
Yeah.
because
Is that the committee?
That is how they reference it in the law, is the word.
No, it's fine.
But yeah, it's not.
Is it the committee?
I think it's interchangeable, seems to be. If you put the word committee there, is that, even though it can stay agency, is that what this committee is, agency?
Maybe you could think about that, Phil.
Hold on. In 5.2, what it's referring to is the Emergency Management Agency itself.
Oh,
At a
yes.
federal level or state?
No, here, local.
Okay, well, that's what we're trying to figure out. That's.
So could it say,
Confused.
on 5.1, can it say organize and manage the York County EMA agency?
No,
Just kidding.
there is a York County.
No.
It's you have for the
Well, I know, but
Atkins-
that's what he said, though, he said the county.
It's referring to
Atkins.
our
Oh, I'm
local,
sorry.
the whole point of the ordinance is to establish the agency, right? Which is what we've done, and that's what the ordinance is.
Well, maybe you should say that
Yeah.
under the
I'll
ordinance,
add
we are
definition.
establishing an agency defined as, consisting of, and defined as the following.
So we could just add a 4.10 and give the definition of agency?
Yeah, I think so.
Would that work,
The
Phil?
word
long as
agency will mean such and
Yeah.
such.
Whatever it is.
5-1 mentions that, but only if you have read the laws and the statute, which we're not going to.
So I would do it in 4, like Jennifer
So
suggested.
we'll add a definition.
Oh, because, right, in
Even out to
3.1,
4.9
under
at
the
the end.
purpose, it does say emergency management agency.
Right.
So it'd be good to have the agency
As a
definition,
Right,
so
okay.
it's
That's easier.
clear. So it's clearer anyway.
I don't want to throw us way off track, but to get my brain wrapped around this, is there an assumption that the agency will mirror this committee? Because this is a committee and it's pointed out as a committee.
That's what the question.
Is that down the line, we develop the agency, the players?
The agency is, when you look at the duties, in effect me.
Okay. Okay.
We're established, it's basically the EMA director in this case.
Who's the-
And volunteers that I might pull in to do something.
Okay.
It's basically you're establishing, like we did with the fire department some years ago.
Well, rather than introducing a new term, if it's the local EMA director, why don't we just state that? Use that term rather than agency, which has to be defined in bold.
So that
It would
gets
take
confusing.
confusion out of
Well,
it.
you're right. It could say the director is hereby authorized to organize and utilize to the fullest extent possible the existing departments, maybe the committee, and resources of the town, and just take that out altogether. So it's clear as to what they're doing.
Well,
Because my question is, does the agency include like the volunteers that you're training? Like, is
Yes.
that like the volunteers, this committee, everything that you put it together, or is it you as the director that is the agency?
The emergency management agency for the town of Acton in effect is me.
So,
Then we need to
So
reword
what
that.
if we
but
stick
it's
to
any
the?
people that you might pull in, which are the people who are sitting at this table
Yeah,
as
that's
well.
not-
That's really the agency and you direct it.
This
That's
this
how I.
is,
This
this
is
is
the
not,
committee.
this is not the agency. This
Oh,
is,
okay.
Then we,
this is,
Yeah, so
this-
for,
the agency literally, since I don't have a department with other employees, I am the agency, and we're establishing that. That's
so
all.
then just
Yeah,
take,
so
and Phil, just take the word out. It can say the director is authorized to organize and utilize to the fullest extent, and just let the sentence go.
Can I
That
make a
gives you the
suggestion?
authority.
in all due respect, he's done a great job in drafting
Oh,
this.
yeah.
Why don't you go back and figure out what you think it ought to say, and just send us a copy
Yeah,
of
we'll
it.
go to another public hearing.
Yeah, so I trust you that you'll come up with, whether it's an
On that
agency or
section?
the director, you
Right.
figure out how to do it.
Just for the confusion, and this is true in any town, even larger ones, some emergency management agencies would, instead of using the word department,
Yeah.
for some reason, the law uses the word agency.
Yep.
But it is a department of the town,
Okay.
which is in effect me.
I personally
Or whoever
wouldn't be
takes my
compelled
place.
to use the word agency just because it's stated in some law. I think, so long as we all understand what it is,
Right.
whatever term you think is best would work for me. I don't know how others feel, so.
Because it does make it sound like agency is a group of people, and if you are the agent, but
The
we can give it some
director is
thought.
Where you say the word department.
Right,
Yeah.
I think it
Okay.
should. Yeah. All right, so let's go down to operation, we'll give that one some thought.
6.3, you can't see the red ink, but it's one of the universal or global questions I had on who has the authority. And of course, I knew this when I wrote it, but it does conflict with the law itself, where a select board member cannot be the director of the agency.
Yeah, so the full board
But-
isn't aware of that yet, so.
Again, these were placeholders in every case, so they're not,
Yeah, we got it.
okay.
So what were you saying?
So, I'm sorry, so you've covered 6, are you on to 7? We're,
No, I'm on 6.3, just so we're clear on what we're gonna.
in the
do.
absence of,
So-
okay, gotcha, yep, so
That's
what,
to resolve here.
yep, so, we sent that over to Brad, as he mentioned. His, recommendation is gonna be, 6.3 should read, in the event of the incapacitation or absence of the emergency management director during emergencies or disasters, the select board shall appoint an interim director to carry out the responsibilities as outlined in this ordinance until the vacancy is filled.
Great,
There you go, perfect.
That's better.
works for me.
Right, because it cannot be a select board.
Right,
member,
but
so-
depending on the disaster, it might need to be Wayne, it might need to be the director of technology, we don't know, depending on what's going on.
It
So
wouldn't,
it's
it wouldn't
John.
be the chair anyways, and that's
Right.
one individual on the board can't make a decision like that anyways.
And
So I'll-
again, these were just placed.
Yeah, no, it's a good point.
That's better wording.
So I'll
I
send
hope
you,
someone's taking all these notes, because I'm thinking.
We
instead
got
of
it.
writing.
Put it all on TV.
way ahead.
What's it take?
All right,
Showing my age.
so
VHS.
6.3 is good, so if we go on to the next one, we need to, kind of make these changes throughout it, right? So when a local disaster exists or appears imminent, well, this is different. So when a local disaster appears or appears imminent, the select board chair, or in the event of their absence, their successor, so this is when someone's actually declaring it. So the $1 million question more to the board is, when a local disaster exists, do you want the EMA director and or select board chair? Who do you want to deem it's a disaster?
We should be both of them.
Yeah.
Together?
It could be more, it could be more than two.
I would
people.
just
It could
pick
be-
one.
it could
I,
be-
Yeah,
made a suggestion to Phil about in coordination with the EMA director, so you work
Yeah.
like, it's working together.
So would
You're not
you
just
do-
Yeah,
taking-
because
you're taking his guidance.
if I'm the chair, I just don't wanna go out and do it on a whim.
Well,
I'm
yeah,
obviously
it
gonna
should be
contact
separate.
him.
Yeah.
It could be two or
So how
three.
about the, I mean, should it be the EMA director first in conjunction with the select board? Or do you want it
Well,
in
the select,
conjunction with-
I think the select board has to declare it.
I agree with that, it should be an elected
Okay.
official
Yeah.
that declares it and terminates it with consultation with
Yeah, with
myself.
consultation.
So it will read the select board
Which,
in
of course, I would have
consultation.
consulted with other people before you and I even spoke, right? So,
Well,
Yeah.
yeah,
But we'll tie to the select board and just the director, so we're not bringing the whole committee in, because we'll never get it.
yeah, these two need to be definitely
All right.
coming from elected officials.
And
Now,
are there any other things like that where it would be the EMA director and the select board working together?
probably a lot of them.
You mean
Yeah.
just in town-wide or in
Yeah.
this ordinance? I mean, I would hope everything.
You may, you can leave it that way and define it that way. You may want to establish an executive committee. That would be the director and the select board. That would have certain duties and responsibilities. One for declaring the emergency, and I suspect there are other things in here that they would be responsible for.
Right, well, he references the committee as outlined with the people here, and then.
No, I'm
he re-
saying an executive.
An
committee.
executive.
This would be
So a
like an
smaller-
executive committee on any board. They're enabled to, they're empowered to act.
On it, okay.
I don't know, how do others feel about that?
We're talking 7-1 and 7-2 in that case, right?
I think he's talking that and any other, that would be a similar situation.
I think we'll find there's some other responsibilities of that group, the EMA director and the select board.
So, which is the very next thing, the termination, so it would, we would call it the same thing, it would be when the select board in conjunction with, or in communication, whatever word
Yeah,
you choose.
those two are identical.
Those will be identical, all right.
Now, the next one, this was obviously a question, and the word then, longer than 5 days is in red ink on mine at least.
No declaration.
And this cannot be there at all. This could be whatever, this is open to discussion. Is 5 days, there should be a limit in my opinion, which is why I put it there, but it's not up to me to decide that.
Is
But
this
if we-
on other EMA directors?
Other towns have limits,
What's the purpose
they
of
do
that?
reference that.
To me, this forces us to go, or forces the agency or the executive committee, whatever we're gonna call it, it forces them to go back and look at the emergency and say, is it still an emergency?
Right.
Because we're
Right?
dealing
Like, do
strictly
we still need all these
local
people
stuff.
engaged, or can we
My
start
concern
getting
from
back?
my point is that if we have an actual emergency going on, I don't wanna stop at day 5, 4.95 and have to reach out. When you've got a termination clause that the select board and the director are gonna terminate it, I'd take 7.3 out altogether.
And that was brought up when I talked to Warren Finance.
of the emergency?
Yeah, well, I
Yeah.
Yeah, but
think,
someone's still gonna
That's what we
decide.
should have.
yeah, it would be the
Right.
director. How would you define
Yes.
this?
What are you saying, Tom?
I think it would be the director and the select board, and whatever you call that,
Right.
they would be responsible for declaring the end of an emergency.
Which is this
And
termination.
I wouldn't put a timeline on it, because these things could easily last, I would think, more than 5 days.
So
We have power.
And if we're right in the middle, if we're right in the middle of
It's like
something, we don't wanna have to
Christmas
stop to,
And hence the big question mark. So we don't need that at all.
right.
No, it's a good point, yeah.
And that was my question.
We were close to that last April with that storm.
Yeah.
You know,
And that everybody's working so hard, it's not gonna be evaluated.
That was
we
something
would have
else.
been down for 10 days.
Okay, well, that's good.
So this is executive, committee that Tom referenced, Phil, could be the select board and the, director. That could be the executive committee, so we could add that as a definition and just use those words in the various places, so you're not having to put the conjunction with and all,
Yeah.
You could say that, when
There's a
it-
lot of global changes we can do that with.
yeah, so that would be consistent throughout it,
So 7.3, are we deleting that line?
deleting, yeah.
Yes.
So 8.1 could be your executive committee as well, correct? During any period when the emergency
Yeah.
proclamation
Right,
is in
and
fact, the executive committee
Yeah.
may, blah, blah.
In other towns, typically it's designated to the director or some places the town manager, which we don't have. So yeah, that would work there.
Okay.
And again, it's always gonna be in consultation.
Right.
Nobody's gonna be doing anything on their own, I'm sure.
If this is an ordinance and you're in the middle of a emergency, what if you need to do something that isn't spelled out specifically in here? Does anyone have authority to go beyond or modify this without going back to town hall? I mean, to town meeting?
Well, then, one of the things that Brent, Mr. Warren and I talked about that, I mean, that was one of the reasons that he didn't want to see too many stipulations in there, because if it's not
Yes.
written that you can't, then we're gonna
That's
assume
right.
that we can, and we're gonna address it after the fact.
If you
We're gonna
look at
deal with
8.1,
emergency.
if you look at 8.1, Tom, it's very broad. It says that such regulations it's deemed necessary to protect, I mean, that is wide open. Critical resources within the purposes of this ordinance, such regulations may include but are not limited to.
I guess, I would like to see something positively stated, that the extent to which the executive committee feels that in order to protect life and property, et cetera, need to deviate from this, that group is empowered to do that. And we don't want to say, have people coming to us, hey, we didn't follow the ordinance and now we're stuck, and we can't do what we need to do. And, you know, those things happen.
Right.
In other words, it's an ordinance, but
But do you think
these
he's,
emergencies are very fluid. You don't know where the hell they're gonna go, and I would keep some authority within that executive committee to make sure we can act.
do you think where it says, Tom, that because it deems necessary to protect life and property and preserve critical resources, it's, you know, they can do the following but are not limited to, so does that
Yes,
leave it open
okay,
enough?
yeah.
So it says that, you know, such
You may wanna check
regulations.
with council on that thought.
Okay, just to make
see how
sure that we
best
have enough.
Are we all comfortable with that concept? Okay.
So where'd we wind up, back at 8.1?
Yeah, well, yeah, because we had just scratched 7.3, and we know that the,
But I mean, 8.1 as written, does that cover what you're looking for, Tom?
yeah, we're just gonna send, I'm gonna just
But
have
make
another
sure-
conversation to make sure that it gives the executive
Flexibility.
I
committee
don't wanna
that.
be held to the letter of the ordinance. If the circumstance on the ground requires us to do something different, I want us to be able to feel comfortable to do that and not have to worry about, you know, citizens or others coming forward saying we exceeded our authority.
And the emergency operations plan actually touches on that very point of flexibility in the
Great.
situation.
How to express
dynamic,
it,
so.
we'll figure out.
Yeah. All right. So we'll put some sort of maybe clause as number 5, just to make sure it's open, but I'll have legal write that.
I think it's okay, but are not limited to.
Basically,
These are
all
just
of 8
examples of what we
is
Yeah.
a similar designation, right, on who has the authority. I mean, it's all of the 8, Article 8.
Yeah, we'll just replace that with our executive committee, and we define the executive committee, so that should be good. This executive committee, I'm looking at 8.4, may require emergency services of any town officer or employee. If regular town forces are doing the executive committee may.
Yeah.
Do you want that, so the second part though, so if it says the executive committee may require emergency services of any town official employee, that's good. If regular town forces are deemed inadequate, the EMA director may accept and appoint volunteers. We don't have to get the committee together,
Correct.
I love them to put
Right,
together
right.
volunteers,
And
so
I
that
have
might
those-
just be
I have
yours.
those people, so I can directly contact them if need be, already, so,
So that part will change to just the EMA director.
yeah, we can just, that.
They don't need to oversee that. I'll do, good.
If anybody has anything, please speak up. Besides Tom, I know Tom will, because he knows.
All right,
Tom,
we're working on this. I'm not
together,
saying
Tom.
another thing. There you go.
He didn't call me out, so I'm gonna keep going.
I couldn't help it, Tom,
He's
but,
always picking on
but
me.
no, the more I put the better to this, I wanna get it right the first time.
No, they'll speak up, I mean, this is a good group of people.
Oh, yeah.
All right, so the 8.5, the blank may obtain vital supplies, equipment, and other items lacking, yeah, so I would have that be the EMA director.
Typically it is.
Okay, we'll just scratch them out, EMA. They appreciate the oversight, but they don't need to, you know, they're not gonna wanna micromanage in the time of a disaster.
That's good, I don't want them to anyway.
Good. I'm here to help you. All right, purchasing policies. During the declared emergency for emergencies such as stabilization, creation of protective measures, debris and cleanup, this ordinance shall apply and purchasing policies shall be suspended. All right, buddy,
Now
tread
keep-
lightly, I'll be watching.
Keep in mind, I know we all know this already, but the ordinance and the emergency operations plan are just pieces of paper unless we declare an emergency.
Right.
Everything, that's the only time any of this kicks in, which makes sense, but you kind of forget about that.
Yep.
And people reading it might, have to remind them maybe before they vote that this is strictly, and it says it in a couple places here and later on too, to remind people that this is not the everyday situation, it's only if and when an emergency is actually declared,
Right.
which is a legal process.
Well, you say that in 3, I guess, in 9.3, in regard to spending.
I guess the only thing before we go on, the 8.4 and 8.5, consider, do we want it just to say the EMA director, or should it say the EMA director and or the board of selectmen? If we need to, I'm now, Tom's got me overthinking us trumping the ordinance. If I need to, if you ask us to order something, or I do, we don't wanna break the ordinance either, so maybe it's the EMA director and or the select board.
You could just say designate.
Or the designee, right, because if you end up having
Yes.
the deputy EMA.
Because the goal is always to be able to expedite whatever we have
Right.
to do, so whatever.
We
makes
don't want one of us to have to purchase on your behalf and, break
Right.
the ordinance, so we'll adjust that one.
Whatever makes that happen, I'm all for it.
Okay,
I get the purchasing policies shall be suspended, but is there still like an approval process? Like you still have to say, hey, I need to get this, or we need to do this, or is it just says, just do what you gotta do? Is that?
yeah.
Basically, the ordinance is saying that during a declared emergency, right,
Mhm.
that the normal purchasing policies are null and void until it's over in effect.
And the only people that are gonna be able to purchase are the EMA director or the designee, so it should limit it. So.
Is it,
And obviously, anything that was gonna be purchased there'd be communications way ahead of time.
I would think if there were any kind of major expenditure, you wouldn't want to be in a position of deciding that on your own.
No,
I think the select board ought to be involved in that. So whether there's a dollar, because this is saying the EMA director has that authority because the policies have been suspended and you've been given authority to do anything you need to do. I don't think you want to be in that position. I think it would be, maybe it's a dollar threshold or something that would require the select board to be involved. In other words, if you had to go out and spend $10,000 that wasn't budgeted, I can't imagine you doing that without talking to the select board.
I'd be calling you from Florida and letting you know I did it.
Well,
My point is-
we gotta also look at it too. This ordinance may last 20 years or so,
Yeah.
so whoever's running it then may look at it differently, so if you put the verbiage in now to kind of cover that,
Yeah.
I don't know what kind of dollar amount you would use, but,
Use the $1,000 that we.
Yeah, I'd go higher than that,
I would,
at least 5,000.
Five,
5,000,
10,000
$6,000,
something like
that.
So we would still,
5,000 happens to be the amount I asked Warren Finance and you folks for the coming fiscal year anyway.
so we still wanna leave the purchasing policy shall be suspended because we don't wanna have to deal with the bid process, and then we'll just add the line that any purchase in excess of 5,000, must be verbally cleared with the majority of the select board or something like that.
This spending will
Yeah, I
not be
think that's
limited by that budget. You mentioned the $5,000 budget. Isn't that what's in your budget?
Yes,
This authority would not be limited by that budget.
No.
If you needed to do something that was more expensive, we have the authority, someone has the
Well-
authority to spend, let's say it's $25,000 that's not budgeted. We just need to act.
Yeah, the whole point is to preserve life and
Yeah.
whatever it takes to do that. And the minute that I thought that we did not have the resources left in this town, I'd be on the phone with the county along
Yeah.
with Wayne would be as well, and they've got plenty of resources that are ready to help us at that point, so.
we just wanna make sure there's no hiccups along the way.
That's
And by doing this, I think that just
That's
put
why
it
we're
in
here,
there now.
Dave.
Yep.
is the full board good with the $5,000 threshold?
Yep.
Okay, alright, so we'll,
Makes sense, yeah.
It does make sense.
we'll make that adjustment. Alright, so 9.1, during the period of declared emergency, the blank may spend or commit to spend town funds as needed to respond to the emergency, as provided in Article 8.
What this is doing is clarifying what the money can be spent on, which is very typical in an ordinance of this kind that I looked at.
So if we say, the EMA director, and then we just add the blurb to, pursuant to 8.6, because 8.6 is gonna have that $5,000 threshold in it, so we can refer back to that to make sure that,
Right.
even though you could spend that amount,
And it's just being very, like I said, explicit on what you can do with that money. You're not mitigating things, you're only doing what you have to in current situation to stabilize it.
During the emergency itself.
Right. And of course, then it states that that ends when the declared emergency ends, which is common sense, but we want it in writing. Right.
I guess my only piece of this is, I wonder if if one is vague enough. I mean, if we've said that you can't spend more than X amount of money without the select board approval, does one give us enough room to purchase anything that could be? I just feel like it's vague.
I think it's too narrow.
Right, that's, yeah.
It's too narrow.
Well, what if you do this?
Do we need to
Instead
spell
of
it out?
Instead of putting an amount, just make sure that it was authorized to the select board before the
Yeah.
amount's done.
I wouldn't try to define it.
That's what I'm worried about. I
would not do
feel
that.
like this is gonna,
I mean, who knows what will come up?
this is gonna shorten what you have the authority to purchase, you know what I mean? I mean, I appreciate that you're putting a cap on it, but I don't wanna take away from what could be needed.
Yeah, my thoughts wasn't to put a dollar amount on it. It was just to, should you be verifying with somebody before you make the purchase? Like, so if you got to clean up Milton Mills Road because people can't get through it or something like that, you're not gonna just call someone and say, hey, Will, I need your crew up here to clean up the thing. You're gonna say, hey, you're gonna call one of the select board members or somebody and say, hey, I need to get somebody here.
I don't think that's a cost I don't think we have to worry about.
Well, no, I was just using Will as a, but I'm just saying if he was to have to do something.
Safe harbor, clean harbors or something like that.
Yeah.
If we had to call someone like that, it was gonna be $10,000-$20,000. I think that would be something there that we'd wanna say, okay, we know it's coming, we got the money for it, do it. you know?
I was just using Will as
Yeah.
a
No, it's fine, yeah.
scapegoat.
Yeah.
I think that, I mean, the limit I think is good because we don't want you to have to make a phone call every time you wanna purchase something. So I think that 8.6 is good the way we left it, but I think that one should be opened up to purchase anything within the guidelines you can
Yeah, I
set.
would agree, yeah.
You know what I mean? This kind of limits what you
Anything
can
that's
do.
What does it cost?
necessary.
Huh?
One doesn't screw up the other one?
Well, no, because one really just says that he can only buy certain things,
Yeah.
and we don't, you know what I mean, we don't want, number one, only emergency work such as stabilization, creation, so then it's gonna come to interpretation, well, Mr. Ross might think that you purchasing that was, the creation of immediate protective measures, but Tom looks at it, says, no, it doesn't really qualify, so I wouldn't put what you're allowed to spend it in, and
Yeah.
if you were, it's for
Yeah,
the,
it's more of saying what you can't.
Yeah.
It's telling you.
I
what
wouldn't
you-
say anything. I would just.
Well, yeah, that's what I'm saying. I would, the first section is perfect, as needed to respond to emergency and minimize the impact of protection,
We could get
potential
rid
in-
of 911 then is what we're saying.
Yeah, that's what I would do.
They're
Just
putting their trust in you.
leave everything else the same.
Emergencies, and so, yeah, operating budgets, to extend expenses during and after an emergency can be charged. Yeah, I would just scratch 9.2
Which- where are
altogether, 9.2. I mean,
Yeah.
normal, we don't wanna tie down an account. I mean, if it's deemed,
So you screwed up the numbers. and-
Yeah.
if it's deemed an emergency and it needs to be purchased, we'll figure out where it's gonna hit after the fact.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
And what did we do, 913?
Oh, we're just moving it up to 2. Or just making it, you got,
There is no two.
Yeah, there is no
It becomes
time.
two.
So
That becomes-
it becomes.
Oh,
So
there
it
is no
becomes
two.
one.
it becomes 1, really.
It becomes
It
one.
does.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
Good catch.
And then 9.2. I think you can get rid of 9.2 altogether. What's the board think? I mean, we
That's
gave
why-
him
that's why
authority.
it's highlighted in
Yeah.
there.
You gave him authority to spend, you told him how much he could spend and how and what authority. It doesn't matter where it hits,
Right.
right?
That was one big
Now-
question mark on me, so.
No, that's good.
If,
I
can,
like deleting
I
things.
guess the question is, can he delegate that authority? Let's say Will, even, he's gotta, buy some material or expend some money. Can the director delegate authority to one of the department heads
For,
spending?
I don't think that's a good idea at all, cause that puts him in a predicament also. I think the EMA director going through us, then
Well,
allowing
he
him
currently
to do
has
it.
that authority, does he
Right.
not?
He's got authority to spend what he's got in his budget already,
Yeah.
but during an emergency, it's gonna go through the EMA director and the select board. And
So when you say go through them, who's gonna actually have to,
he's
'cause
gonna,
we'll be
he's gonna be in
suspending-
touch with him.
So,
He's gonna say, I need this and this and
Now
that
remember,
because of the
it's
emergency.
gotta be a declared emergency
Yeah.
before.
no, I
anything-
understand that, I get that. I'm just saying, at a practical level, and it could be anyone around the table who's a director, fire department as well, when they have a need to expend, and it may not be within the scope of their budget. Go ahead.
I might be able to give you an example where this would sound a little, where this might play out. And my example won't be specific to what might happen, but say you need to use the school. You call me, hey, we're under an emergency, yeah, I see that, we need to use the school, yeah, we have a plan, we're following the plan. How many people, X, Y, or Z, and I say, gee, Phil, our coolers are kind of empty towards the end of the school year, I'm gonna need 16 loaves of bread to fill the, to feed these people, and I'm not taking it out of the school budget. All he has to do is say, go ahead. I call Cisco, we get the
Right.
bread, he told me to do it, I did it, and
Right.
it was his call.
right.
Okay.
He
And
works
he's-
through me to get that to happen, because he doesn't know how much bread I have at the school.
Right.
I do.
That's my
I can
point.
find out. I think
It's like
that's why I
the
gave that
director's
example.
really
And
Yeah.
are in a
and-
position to know
Yeah.
what to get, where to get it,
Right.
and what's a reasonable price.
You should,
Phil, I'm not sure you do, but perhaps you want to get engaged and have that authority, then you're accountable for all of that. As opposed to the
Right, so-
directors who really have that expertise.
well, so Phil will reach out to the correct department, but.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah, okay.
yeah,
And
but-
so, and he's still, based on 8.6, can't go over the 5,000 without verbally hearing from a majority of the board,
Okay.
unless you want the number higher.
I mean, I think either way, you're gonna have that communication. That communication's gonna happen.
I mean, you think back to
There's no way
COVID.
where he's not gonna, or me, he's not gonna talk to one of you, like, it doesn't matter, right? I think that communication's still gonna happen, whether it's
Yeah.
officially written here or not. I think we're all gonna communicate. I don't see how you get past this without.
My job is, if you look, the director's job in this position is to, when I read that definition I made up at the beginning, is to utilize all the town resources from a central point, looking, the big picture as it were. And obviously, everything has to do with communications. I'm not gonna make, I can't imagine too many decisions, there's some I could just do unilaterally like we talked about, but anything else is gonna be, I'm asking Will questions, or me and Wayne are having a conversation, or I'm talking to John because I think we're gonna, we might have to do an evacuation and we're gonna need some time, some room in the gym or here. None of that's gonna happen without a lot of communication, because in my opinion, I've stated this to Tom.
What I'm getting at is, let's say you and Will are having a conversation about something that's needed, and you agree that it needs to be done. And it may not be practical to get the select board together. Are you authorized to say to Will, go ahead and do it, execute, and the town's gonna honor that?
I don't have a problem doing that in a declared emergency at all.
But he would actually, then, you would give him the authority to go ahead and execute that.
Right.
That's what I'm trying
Yes,
to get at.
yeah. No, I
Is
hear
how
what you're
does
saying.
he get that authority?
Right.
It's coming from you.
And his responsibility would just keep the costs during that emergency that were spent outside his
Yeah.
normal budget.
Yeah, yeah.
So,
I have no
Tom,
problem
we can
doing
put it, I
that.
know, but I think what Tom's saying, we can put a line, and I'm gonna find the appropriate part, that basically says that during the disaster, that, department heads, have the authority to waive it through your approval for a purchase, or the designee's approval.
To purchase
Right.
based on authority granted
From
by
the
you.
EMA
That's,
director.
that's
So,
all.
He just wants to make sure it's
keep
written
track of
out.
what they spent, and it comes back to you in the end.
Yeah.
I'll get rid of
Okay.
section 8 after it comes after the spending.
Right, just put something
it
in there
right
about
that-
I'm sorry, what was that, Wayne?
Probably in section A where we put that cap, the 5,000, whatever, probably the next line down, 8.7 or whatever, becomes
Clarification.
Yeah.
Right.
becomes that delegation.
Yeah.
or-
Yeah.
So clarification of delegation of spending through the EMA director.
Then it
Okay.
keeps it all together.
All right, good points. All right, so did we decide, so 9.2, we're gonna dissolve that completely, right?
Yes.
Directors of the,
10 minutes ago.
I knew the financial part would be the most difficult.
all right, join the direction.
Okay.
All right, looking at 10, is there anything include but not be limited to? Coordination between volunteers. The time of declare.
Is there anything on 10?
Yeah, I don't see anything that jumps out.
No, I think it's fine.
And 11 is referring to what I mentioned, which will be our next workshop, where it's literally, well, it's probably gonna be 20 to 30 pages when I'm done, which is actually short compared to some.
That's after we get the ordinance passed.
Right. It'll be in April sometime when I'll have the draft out
That's
for
fine.
everybody to go through. So that's what it's referring to here. The select board, and it'll be, this doesn't have to go through the town meeting. This will be
No.
something that once we
Right.
go through the select board blesses it, and off we go. So that's what 11.1 is saying. As far as the maintenance of it, that's where we would all, once a year, let's say, if that's what we decide, I think I put annually. It would be reviewed for updates from each department, let's say, if things, we're gonna learn things the first year.
John, do you have an EMA, John, do you have any type of disaster plan? If the disaster is just within school, you have
We
that
do, we
plan?
shared it with Wayne, we've signed off on it, he signed off on it, public safety signed off on it. It's about moving the entire facility to another location, and in this case, then Wayne would take over the facility, would take over the school.
So that would never be a town disaster, right? That would
That's
just
what I
be a
meant,
school.
that was my question. Does this include the school or not? Because you have your own plan.
I do, but if the town disaster impacts the school, say it's something to do with the river right there by the entrance to the school,
Yeah.
I'm moving the kids and the staff, we have that plan in place. To a safe location under what
This
we've already
isn't gonna
agreed.
counteract anything, right?
No.
For the
Should.
ones that-
I think the specific
I would
emergency.
defer to you, you know your
Because I could
plan.
have a school emergency that's not a town emergency,
Right.
that's what we're written
Yeah.
for,
Right.
you know,
That's-
read between the lines there, if
And
something bad happens
exactly,
at the
that's what you
school,
wanna retain
we're,
authority over.
we're good to go, but if something bad happened in the town and it impacted the school, I'd probably still go to that same plan that you and I have that's agreed upon, because it takes us to a safe place.
And that's
Until
what
kids,
this,
until kids can get home to
this
their
would
parents.
interleave with it at that
Yeah.
point if necessary, but
Yeah.
they're two separate things.
Yeah, cool.
And that's the flexibility part, right? This is gonna be so dynamic of speed, God forbid anything happens, but the flexibility part is, and that's why we're all here talking, we're gonna do what we have to do, on the fly, basically, and that's why we're all talking, because we'll be able to do that a lot easier, I think.
I was reading ahead when you called on me. I think I read, and it's highlighted because maybe it's not there, that the may look at the plan when periodically by the select board. The plan will be reviewed periodically by the select board, but then I heard annually.
Where are
Is
you at,
annually in
John?
there?
Where are
I
you
jumped
at?
down to
Number
it. The reason I jump on 11.3 is when you say things like periodically, it can get lost.
Okay.
Right.
I have a ton of things by state law I'm supposed to do, and they never happen, but we have to do it annually to keep our skills fresh. There's a lot of those in statute 28 that I'm responsible for. Might it happen? It might, but it's good that we did it, right? I don't know if you want to say annually or the big every July or.
Actually, John,
Is it
in
somewhere?
the EOP itself that I'm writing, it's not in here.
Okay.
It does, there's a section for plan maintenance, and it
Yes.
does say annual.
So you said annually, and it's in that document. It's not here. Okay.
We will change it
Nope,
here.
that's
so
that's fine. I knew I heard it, but I didn't read it. Okay.
And Phil, who's
All right.
I've
responsible
got
for
whole
that?
things in my
Yeah,
head.
yeah,
so
I
I'm-
got
Who's responsible for doing that?
What?
The
The
annual.
review.
The Zoom
The
involves
annual
you.
plan?
Hmm?
The annual plan is, what we're gonna do here is have everybody involved once a year on the plan maintenance, because
Yeah, no, I see
But
that.
I think we can reword to say the EMA director shall annually
Call it.
Yes.
review
In
with
here,
the
yeah.
select board, you know what I mean? So let's change it, so at least it puts it on one person, whoever that is, to start it, you know,
That-
solicit the meeting.
that'll jive with what's in the operation.
You're lost. It's lost.
That's right.
So the EMA director shall call it, all right?
The only other note I had there was just match the language from 4.9, where it listed out all the parties.
Where you at?
Matching that language, so it matches 4.9, because we spelled them all out in 4.9, and then we spelled some of them out here, but not all of them.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, 11.3,
Let me explain that real quick, because what it.
Oh, yeah, it should be the same ones.
What it was is I was asking the question, are we gonna refer to it as a committee, or are we gonna spell it out? So this was saying if we decide to call it a committee, it's just referring back to the definition. In other words, I think we
Which
should just
committee are
spell
we
it out
referring
like we
to?
agreed.
Well, I think there'd be a
Well,
committee and an
yeah,
executive
4.9
committee.
spells emergency committee and defines it, so that
Right.
is.
So we should have a definition for committee, the executive committee, so that they understand the
You should
difference.
have
in the
names,
roles.
separate names for each, and they should be
And the
defined.
positions listed.
Yeah.
So the only other thing at the bottom, so the violation, so it shall be a violation of this ordinance to obstruct, hinder, or delay, emergency management forces, should there be a penalty fine?
Now, keep in mind, we have a mooring ordinance that has violations and fines, and other towns, and I don't care either way, to be honest, that's why it's a question. But other towns, including, like I said, our mooring ordinance, do have a violation clause, and any town that has that typically has like $100 fine or something, like we do in our mooring clause. So there's some civil, if we're gonna do a violation, there's some civil penalty. Or
Is it fair to say if somebody were to try to obstruct the activities of the EMA director, that would probably be a crime?
It's obstruction of
Not
governmental
just a
administration.
fine in an ordinance, but my guess is many of those things would be criminal.
That would be legal, I'm sure.
Yeah.
I don't even think we don't need.
I would delete the entire section, just
Yeah.
because I'm thinking, for a couple of reasons, so I don't see the average person trying to obstruct or hinder if they do. That's what we have law enforcement for. If anybody breaks, even unintentionally, any part of this ordinance, because we're having a major disaster and we're gonna ask for forgiveness later, it's gonna be somebody sitting at this table. So, do you know what I mean? Because we're gonna make, just like we did at COVID, no, we're gonna make the best decisions for everybody involved at the time. We
Yeah,
are gonna
it
follow
really
this
hangs
the best
along.
we can, but, yeah, I'd get rid of it altogether, just in case.
So we're
Just in case
getting
my
rid
board,
of,
you
we're
know,
getting rid of 13.
Yes.
That's a good idea.
All right, and civil buildings, excellent.
Is that it
Looks
on that?
good. Phil, I'm gonna congratulate you, you have 2 minutes to spare.
Yeah, you
Very
know what?
proud of you.
Wait, I'm not-
Phil, is there
Ah,
anything you'd like to use that
Hold on a second. I know that Tom hung out in the back room for 7 minutes on purpose.
So you,
I actually get mine.
on a serious note, because we are on camera and we did mention him, the animal control officer, that's who has been messaging me. He has a situation that he's dealing with on Gore Road regarding an animal in the road, so he's sorry he couldn't be here and we'll catch him up.
He's where he needs to be.
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah.
This is beneficial.
Yeah, nice.
Okay.
Nice
So
job,
Article
Phil.
15
Thanks
is
for
good? Thank you.
pulling this
Yeah,
together.
Article 15, yeah.
Okay.
So we can, if it's okay, Phil, you and I will work over the next, oh, well, let's get to the warrant. Next week, let's pretty up these changes. I'm gonna reach out to legal, and then we'll send it to the committee again. I'm hopeful the select board will, set a public hearing date tonight for this and maybe another ordinance that Dan and I have been working on. So I'll have a date for you.
I definitely wanna see this April 12th get approved, that would be great.
It's
So-
already on the warrant.
And I was gonna mention one thing, hopefully, I don't know if everybody's a resident here, but, probably, right?
Everybody but me,
Well-
John and I.
I know John.
Next time.
But anyway, I hope we all show up to vote and encourage other people to get this thing through.
I don't expect you'll have any
I
problems.
I think this is gonna go through with no problems.
Well
We're not gonna hinder something like this.
I appreciate.
Ray, you got
Ray, Ray, you
I'm
gonna
glad
vote
we
for
did
it?
it this way.
Once the changes are made.
Alright.
I gotta see it in writing.
I'm shutting down the emergency management ordinance workshop at 5 o'clock.